If you want to be a man, you tell the truth. It's going to hurt, but that's what a man does. And one of the greatest gifts that the men get by working with me is I can connect in their If you are lying or not being honest in a particular area of your life, you might hit a ceiling somewhere else and you can't seem to figure your way out there, but it's actually based upon the lie that you told somewhere else. And until you speak the truth, you are in a prison of your own making. And here's the coolest part about it, is you are in a prison with the key to the lock to get out of it is in your pocket. And in order to pull the key out of your pocket, you got to tell the truth. Well, welcome to the Burn Up Podcast. My name is Adam Nugent. I'm your host. And today we're going to be talking about truth. And what is truth? A lot of people will say, I know this to be true. But the reality is the word that actually really describes what they're saying is more of a belief, is more of something that they think or an opinion. That word is used far too often. And one of the big things that I want to get into as well is the cost of not telling the truth and how that impacts our lives, and also the cost or the reward of saying or speaking the truth. They say that truth will set you free. Well, sometimes the freedom that we're searching isn't even about something that we may or may not have said that isn't accurate or honest to someone else. It's more about the stories we're telling ourselves. If we believe something over a long period of time, sometimes an entire life, it becomes truth. It becomes who we are. For example, if you have feelings that you're not worthy or you're not enough, and you have told yourself that over and over and over and over your entire life, that is your truth. That is something that, to you is true. But is it? And when we speak the truth, it can be very painful. There's so many layers to this. Again, the difference between truth and believing something. Now, I live here in Salt Lake City, Utah. I'm no longer part of the Mormon religion, but I was raised in the Mormon church. I left nearly 10 years ago. We were raised, and the doctrine teaches that Mormonism, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, is the one and only true church. And I actually served a LDS Mormon mission, went to Argentina when I was 19, and we would bear testimony at the time. And it's mostly when people bear their testimony, they will say, I know the church is true. And constantly seeing that. And I geek out on just the religious battles of whatever the religion is. In my case, my culture is rooted in Mormonism. So seeing, active Mormons or inactive or and going back and forth thinking they're going to try to convince each other. And when somebody posts evidence of this, let's say is going against what the church is proclaiming, somebody will get on there. It's not uncommon and they will say, I know the church is true. I know it's true. And again, do any of us really know? You have a belief. Many times people will say, well, I've had this feeling. Well, I just know. You have feelings, but just because you have feelings, it doesn't mean you actually know. Has God come to you? Have you spent time with God, and know firsthand? I truly believe the only way you can really know something is if you've experienced it. And so many times people say, well, I know this is true, or this happens in religion and politics, especially in religion. I know the Bible is the true word of God. You know that, or you believe that? It's just something to think about, because something might be true for you today, but then with further insight and further knowledge and further education or life experiences, more often than not, all of a sudden what you thought was true one day isn't. And many times when we think something is to be true, whether it's about somebody else, whether it's about a belief, or more importantly about ourselves, when the realization kicks in that what we felt or thought to be true is not, a lot of things can happen. For me particularly, my belief for most of my life is, that I was not worthy of love, that I was not enough. That was my truth. You couldn't have told me otherwise. And, up in my head, if you will, I could hear it, it made sense from that perspective. Someone said, hey, you are worthy of love, or you need this or that. But the reality is I didn't believe it. And so it wasn't true to me. What was true to me is that I did not feel worthy. I did not love myself. That was true, but because I had told myself that. But the reality was, it was a lie. It wasn't honest. And many times when the truth is finally exposed or brought to light, if you will, it sets you free. But then there sometimes can be a snowball effect, or there can be a domino effect, if you will, that all of a sudden other things start to come up. So many times our truths support our identity and who we are. So again, coming back to religion, many times when people have lived in an orthodox religion, specifically, for example, with Mormonism, where it's the one and only, and then all of a sudden one day they come to a conclusion, or they've been presented evidence, or whatever happens to be, that it's not true to them or not true. It's not just the awareness or the belief now, it's that their identity has been tied to a certain belief their entire life. And now their identity is shaken to the core. And many times people will be like, who am I? What is real? I mean, it can spiral. And many times people have a hard time telling the truth because their identity is attached to that. One of the things I geek out on are attachment wounds, oversimplifying it. In relationships, you've got someone that can have a secure attachment style. You can have someone that has an anxious. You can have someone that has an avoidant, and then there's different versions of each and every one of those. Well, relationally for me in the past, I've tend to lean more anxious. In my previous partnership and in my marriage, my partners tended to lean more avoidant. And so I'm always curious. I want to kind of understand, want to know what's mine, what's theirs. And more than anything, I want to have insight and information so I can get to know the people in my life, specifically in partnership, of why they move through the world the way they move, and why do I move through the world the way I do, and trying to understand that. I truly believe more curiosity and understanding helps us, really get to whatever is quote unquote true. But many times when you present somebody, let's say with an avoidant attachment wound or a dismissive avoidant attachment wound, where they might not be being honest or something, severe could have happened, but they can't speak the truth. It seems so simple to the person on the other side. Well, just tell the truth, just say what it is. But the reality is, by speaking the truth, it's not just taking ownership in the pain that it feels like that. It's their identity. It's their worth. It's that they're broken. It's so painful for some people, depending upon their upbringing and what's happened, that the reality is the ability to speak the truth, they don't even have the capacity to do that. And it's wild if you really think about it. But when you understand even the science behind this and all the different factors that play into it, rather than, judge them or be angry with them, yes, you can still have all those feelings independent of what happened. But the reality is, if you can get to a certain place and understand where they're coming from, you can connect more in their heart space and understand them more from where this is coming from. Many times they don't even realize they're doing it. Their default's just to constantly lie. One of my things that I always used to lie about all the time when I was married is when I was coming home, I would tell my wife at the time, I'm like, hey, she'd call, hey, where are you? I was running late. I was always late. And she said, I'd say, oh, I'm 10 minutes away, or I'm right around the corner. Well, I was 20 minutes away or 30 minutes away, or there might've been times where I hadn't even left yet. So why did I not just say, like, I haven't left yet, I'll see you in an hour? Because I didn't want conflict. I wanted to avoid. I didn't want her to be upset. But what was worse, me just telling her that and letting the sting hit her there? Or more importantly, she has an expectation that I'm going to show up at a certain time, and then I continue to let her down. Literally just this last week, we were talking about me being on time right now and with my partner today. And, my ex-wife, she was laughing. She goes, wait, he's on time? And I respect time. Like I try to be on time all the time now. I really respect it. I didn't before. But her experience with me was that I was always late. Whatever time I said that I was going to be there, she just didn't believe me. And over time, whatever time I told her, she just would dismiss it or add extra time because my word didn't matter because I was lying. And just saying that, I lied, and there's a cost to lying. And most of the lies that each and every one of us tell, they're little white lies. They're little things that add up. Something, the example that I just gave you with me lying about when I'm going to be home, or, if you have a client, you're in business and you forgot to call somebody back, right? We all forget things. And instead of saying, oh my gosh, I forgot to call you back, you make up some excuse. Oh, I had a meeting run late. I had this. Why not just say, you know what? I totally forgot to call you back. I actually had this experience with a client that I forgot to call several years ago. And he was pissed. He had a right to be. I told him I was going to call him. And my default prior to that would have been just to make up the excuses, like the examples I just gave you. And I told him on the phone, I'm like, his name was Brent. I said, Brent, I'm sorry. I totally spaced it. And his frustration and anger completely went away. He goes, you know what? I appreciate you telling me the truth. We all forget. And it was no big deal. But he was ready for me to lie or to, excuse it away. And again, it comes back to when I said earlier at the beginning, it's like the truth will set you free, but it can hurt. It does hurt. And in some cases, it can sting big time. And what I've learned in my own journey, in my own life, especially in my own transformation over the last several years and losing my business and going through all the pain of that and recognizing the areas where I wasn't telling the truth or I wasn't completely honest, the pain of sitting with that has been excruciating, been very, very uncomfortable. And when we don't tell the truth, we're actually wearing a mask. We're wearing a mask. And when you can finally rip off the mask and just speak it and just own it, it hurts. But the more you do it, the less it hurts, the less it stings. And the more and more you do it, it just becomes like, you know what? I'm human. Like, yep, this is what happened. And I'm in a season today, like integrity matters to me. It's one of my core values. And my commitment to myself and anyone that I'm with is like, I will always speak the truth. You might not like what I have to say, but I'm going to speak the truth. I'm going to tell you. And I believe that when we're sharing feedback with somebody or telling them something, I think many times the delivery matters and how we present this. You know, many of you know that know me or maybe hearing this for the first time, I used to weigh 350 pounds. Now, I was so sensitive to that if anybody in the room was talking about physical health or working out or whatever happened to be, I felt uncomfortable. Of course, I personalize it. Even if they weren't talking about me, I made it about me. And if someone at that room would have came up to me and said, "Hey, Adam, you know you're fat, don't you?" That would have hurt and stung like nothing else at that time. Painful. But why would it be painful if someone that loved me or cared about me called me fat? Now, because they used the word fat? If they would have said, "Hey, I'm concerned about your health. Hey, I've noticed you put on a few pounds." I mean, you can sugarcoat the entire thing to get the delivery to hopefully have it be received. But the reality is, like, I already knew that. And so me having a reaction to the truth was painful because I already knew that. And somehow we convince ourselves that we don't want to have other people tell us that. But the reality is, like, if we have a reaction to something that somebody says, there is something that we're connecting with them. You know, many of you know Andy Elliott, you know, the musclehead on TV sales coach that, you know, wears biker shorts and has people come up on stage and takes their shirt off. Well, to me, that's very humiliating. It's very humiliating. He brings them up on stage, makes them, you know, well, they volunteer, but uncomfortably so. Sometimes in front of hundreds of people, overweight men will take their shirts off, and then he sits and points out and he goes, "Do you think you'd make more money if you were in better shape? Do you think this and this and this?" Everything he is saying is accurate. It's the truth. It is true. But the delivery, in my opinion, is pain. It doesn't resonate with me. And men sometimes we need to get punched in the face. Sometimes we need to have that just direct, cutthroat, "Let me tell you how it is." And other times we don't. And I think if you're coming from a very genuine, loving place, if you can deliver it in such a way, it can help the other person be able to receive it. Because the reality is a lot of people, and I would actually say most people, aren't willing to have a hard time accepting the truth, especially if it's about them. And again, so much of it goes back to identity. So much of it goes back to self-worth. So much of it goes back to upbringing. I mean, there are so many layers to it. And so it's a very painful process to be able to get to a place to where you can take the truth. Like, I'm okay with it. I want the truth. If my words and actions aren't aligned, I want to be checked. I have people in my life that I have asked, I'm like, if you see that if I say something and don't follow through on it, I want you to check me. And more often than not, when I do get checked, and it's less than it's ever been, and I'm not perfect by any means, it might sting a little bit. And there's moments, if the delivery sucks, especially like my oldest son, there's no filter. He just calls me out. And his delivery is, you know, my opinion, could work on it a little bit. He and I joke about that sometimes. But when it hurts, the reality is what he's reflecting back to me is I have said, "Hey, integrity matters to me. I want my word to matter. I didn't follow through on this." And it's really a reflection back to me that, and it's a mirror that, hey, my words and actions aren't aligned. And so regardless of the delivery, the more confident you get in yourself, the more you're able to speak the truth, the more you're able to express that. The reality is, like, the more confident you're going to be, and frankly, the more free you're going to be. Now, I've been through a lot of shit, done a lot of stuff I'm not proud of, you know, and the reality is I have spoken to it. I've taken ownership. I've taken accountability to it. If I walked into a room today and I noticed that people are talking about me or saying this, like, they're not talking about anything that I haven't publicly said, either on social media, or if there's been a betrayal or something that's happened to somebody that I haven't spoken to it and taken accountability for. There is nothing that I have. I'm confidently here to say that, like, I don't have any secrets. And that is freeing, but it's been very painful to get to that process, to detach my worth from things that I have done, right? It's not who I am, it's what I've done. And I'm telling you that the truth, the little white lies, if you don't speak it, it will catch up to you. So for those of you that follow me on social, and a big root of in my coaching curriculum and the programs that I built is around the foundation. I work with men, and is how strong is your foundation? And more importantly, where are there cracks in your foundation? Where are they? And most of those cracks are rooted in little white lies. And we dismiss it. It's no big deal. We dismiss it. No one's going to know. It's the secret. Now, I talk about this, and what I found with a lot of men, a common thing that a lot of men turn to is pornography and porn. And I'm not here to tell you, honestly, I have my own opinion, and I'm not here to say whether porn is good or bad. I'm here to tell you it's the secret. It's the fact that you're doing something in hiding. When you do it in hiding and you're not open about it, there's shame attached to it. If you're open about it and you're looking at it, if you happen to be married and you and your, husband, wife, or whatever you guys are into, go at it. More power to you. But if one of you is hiding that because of shame and guilt, because it's out of your integrity, otherwise, why hide it? There's no reason to. But when there's little white lies, what I would call, another way of wording is like when you put on these masks, and so you're presenting yourself as one person on one way with somebody, but the reality is there's something else behind the scenes that you're hiding, that you're not telling the truth. And I believe, we are all connected, if you will, energetically. And just like a crack, right? If it's not attended to over time, it can get bigger and bigger and bigger, like a crack in a dam. If a crack isn't addressed, it could take weeks, months, years, decades, but at some point the dam's going to break because the crack has not been addressed. And so energetically, it affects you. It's a weight that you are carrying if you're not able to speak the truth. And there are consequences, both positive and negative, for not telling the truth. So for example, in the example I gave with pornography, if you're a dude that's married, that's looking at porn and your wife doesn't know, what if she finds out? What if the neighbors find out? What if she starts telling all the family? Who are you? What would that be? What if the truth really got out? How would people see you? Whoa, right? So it's the pain and the fear of what other people think. Is my wife going to leave me? My kids found out, and all these different things. I mean, all the stories in our head. So what do? We just bury it. So the shame and the guilt. It's no big deal. We move on with our life. But energetically, that will catch up with you. It will always catch up with you. The truth, and I can tell you this from experience, and I've seen it play out, the truth will always, and I mean always, come out, whether spoken or not. If you are lying or not being honest in a particular area of your life, you might hit a ceiling somewhere else, and you can't seem to figure your way out there, but it's actually based upon the lie that you told somewhere else. That's how this works. And until you speak the truth, you are in a prison of your own making. And here's the coolest part about it. The irony in it is you are in a prison with the key to the lock to get out of it is in your pocket. And in order to pull the key out of your pocket, you got to tell the truth. And again, there are consequences. There are consequences to both positive and negative, frankly, to everything. So yes, if you've told a lie or you're not telling the truth, it's going to hurt. Some other people might be affected by it. A lot of people might be affected by it. But the minute you speak it, the minute you step into that uncomfortableness and you own your part, you take radical accountability, you are free. And for those of you that have experienced the cost of hiding versus actually speaking the truth, if you happen to be watching this, comment, below and actually, say what that feels like. The weight of hiding something versus actually speaking to it. I'm telling you, it is not worth it. The freedom of being completely accountable and owning your shit, detaching your worth from all the things that you've done or not done, I'm telling you, is free. It's priceless. It is an energy that if you have felt it or are feeling it, and if you haven't, I'm inviting you to lean into that, because regardless of what you believe religiously or spiritually or higher power, I truly believe that the key to the greatest connection with the spirit, divine, God, is rooted in integrity. I also believe that the minute you take ownership in that In the eyes of God, in the eyes of the universe, you just jumped up 10 levels. Why? Because the ability to speak the truth and the ability to actually take radical accountability for the role you play is a superpower, because most people cannot do it. Most people cannot speak the truth. It's fascinating, and it's sad, and it's wild. And I was that guy for most of my life. So the pain of actually taking ownership and radical accountability hurt, the pain that I've caused other people. I mean, the pain of going through all of that and owning all of that is excruciating. That's why most people don't do it. That's why we don't do it. And it starts with little things, just like the example I gave with my ex-wife. I was lying about when I was going to get home. So dumb. Nothing to lie about. And so the ability to speak the truth many times also is we want the other person to feel comfortable. We don't want to hurt them. We don't want them to, see us a certain way. But at the end of the day, here's the wild part. And it's like this aha for me, especially now. None of us have any control how anyone else sees us. Period. No one does. The only person that we have any control over is ourselves. Even our children. Those of us that have kids, I can't control my kids. They get to be themselves. Do I have influence on my kids? Absolutely. But can I control them? Can I control how they see me? What they believe? No. And I don't want to. I want them to be independent thinkers. I want them to think for themselves, even if we completely disagree with it. I'm all for it. Like, you do you. I want you to be confident and be the best version of you. And I want that for everybody. But think about this. If you are lying and you are hiding something, the reality is whatever relationship that you are currently, let's say it's in a marriage or friendship or business, it doesn't matter what it is. The reality is the relationship or what you're presenting to the other person or to other people is a lie. That's the lie. You are presenting yourself as somebody that frankly you are not. Or you are establishing trust and confidence when the reality it is on a foundation of cracks. It might be on a foundation of stilts. And what happens when you step into that energy or you stay in that energy for a long time? Over time, again, energetically, it starts to weigh on you. And what do we do as men? That's when the pain of it, the shame, the guilt, when we're sitting alone, because we always know. We always think to ourselves, hey, they never know. They're never going to find out. But the universe knows, God knows. You can't hide, you cannot run from yourself. And we convince ourselves, and the reality is but deep down inside, when we're alone, we know. And when those feelings start to kick in, that's when we turn to substances. That's when we turn to addictive behaviors, to numb that pain out, to not feel that. And it gives us just enough relief to make it through the next day. And then we get into an addictive cycle, an addictive pattern, and it starts to intensify and get stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger until we break. And I'm telling you right now, from experience, you cannot outrun the truth. Ever. You can't. No matter what you tell yourself, it's like something happened 20 years ago, 30 years ago. It's still there. You're still thinking about it. Somebody mentioned something, it's the constant reminder. The universe is constantly reminding you of your betrayal, whatever your lie, whatever it happens to be. And I'm telling you, you can't outrun it. And it's not worth the cost. So I haven't talked about this recently, but one of the things that I'm very passionate about when someone feels called to it is plant medicine, psychedelics. And specifically ayahuasca is my favorite plant medicine. And my favorite thing about ayahuasca, well, actually, let me take a step back. So when people always ask, what's it like? What's the experience like? And the way I articulate it, the way I explain it, and the truth is you can't know what it is until you actually do it, just to be clear. Once you experience it, then you know. But basically what ayahuasca does, the way I explain it is, every one of us as humans have a unconscious and a subconscious part of our brain, okay? And so what happens when you're in a plant medicine ceremony, what happens is it takes your subconscious, your conscious, and the divine, God, whatever God is to you, puts everything into alignment and then rips away every story we tell ourselves. And then you get to sit with your truth, just no one else's truth, not supported by narratives or stories or beliefs or my mom did this or that or whatever happens to be. It's just you and you. And I'm telling you, that process can be, depending upon what's gone on in your life, excruciating, painful. The first time I did ayahuasca, I was in Costa Rica at a resort there. And I remember a gentleman I got to know really well. And we had the first night. In that particular week, you do it actually 4 nights in a row. The very first night, I had this most beautiful self-love discovery thing. It was just awesome. And the next morning, I'm on cloud 9, just had eaten breakfast. And I saw this gentleman that I connected with, and he was sitting over there, on a rock somewhere with his head down. I went up to him and I said, "How was your first experience?" And he didn't even look up to me. He looked up to the side to me like this, looked over, and he said, "Well, I saw who I am." I'm like, "Who are you?" He's like, "I'm a liar. I cheat. I steal." He just went on and on and on. A man that had made a ton of money, but had all these little white lies and all these things he was doing, and he had to sit with him, and he got to see all of it. Stuff that he had buried, pretended didn't exist, but it was always there. And it's one of the most beautiful yet painful experiences when you can actually sit with just you and accept and take radical accountability. Because when you're in that experience, you can't run. Like, there's no running. And if you run it, fight it, and want to see it, it even intensifies and get even stronger. And so, but the reality is, in order to have what we want, in order to call in what we want in life, we have to let go of what's not serving us. If we want to build an empire or a family or, have physical health, whatever it happens to be that we want to build, it requires that we have a very strong foundation. And if we have a foundation that is built on lies, no matter how big or small they are, we can't build something sustainable. It's going to shake. It's going to rock. There's going to be earthquakes. It's going to be constantly moving. And so the minute you speak the truth, the minute you take accountability and accept the consequences of whatever happens, that particular crack gets sealed. Now it's solid. And the more and more you practice this, and the more and more you are actually honest and speak the truth as time goes on, the more solid your foundation is, the less pain you have, the less shame you have, the less guilt you have, and the more freedom you have. And most importantly, the more peace you have. Now, I've gone to hell and back over the last several years, and I can tell you with confidence that I am more peaceful as a man. I am more confident in who I am than I've ever been in my entire life, ever. And the cost to getting there was excruciating. It was expensive. It cost me relationships. It cost me money. It cost me reputation. It cost me all sorts of different things. The cost to get there. But the reality is, the freedom that's come on the other side of it has been worth the journey. And here's the reality. If you have white lies or things that you're hiding, let me just be really clear. You are in the majority, number one. So you're not alone. That you're hiding some sort of addictive pattern from your wife, that, whatever it happens to be. Let's say you're a closet alcoholic. You're drinking all the time, but nobody knows. Right? Well, the guy down the street that you confide in or finds out that you speak the truth, finds out that you've been drinking, and he and his wife are talking shit and, gossiping about you. Well, that guy happens to have a painkiller addiction, and he's hiding that. And again, it's so easy to point a finger at other people. Once you go through this, you can't unsee certain things. I'm blown away by the people that judge and point a finger at people for things that they do or things that they said when they have their own shit behind the scenes, when It's fascinating to me. One of the things that turns me off more than anything is hypocrisy. Hypocrisy. Judging people, pointing fingers out when they have their own shit. So let's be clear. We all have it. We all have shit. And I'm telling you that when you can get to a place to speak the truth, when you go through that process, if you've been hiding things for a long time, to start telling the truth immediately, it's hard. It's hard. If it wasn't, you wouldn't have gone this long without it. But I'm telling you, the more you practice that, the more you step into that, it's going to be uncomfortable. But the cost of staying where you're at, I promise you, it's debilitating. You have no idea how many balls and chains, and some of you might have a ton, others a little, but nevertheless, it's a ball and chain that doesn't need to be there. That prison, you don't need to be in there. Just tell the truth. And as you start to walk down that path and start to do it, it's painful. It's uncomfortable. Your worth's attached to it. Who you are, your identity, all these things different happen, but you keep doing it. And then there's additional work and there's things you can do. This is at the root of what I do, is to let's identify these things. Let's identify the parts of your life that aren't working. We have to. Like, let's get it out. And one of the greatest gifts that the men get by working with me is I can connect in their shit. If it's something that they've done or something they're ashamed of, they're safe with me because I most likely have done it myself. And I'm okay owning that. I'm okay owning that. Trust me, whatever you've done, you're not alone. If you walk into a room with, especially, I'm specifically, well, mostly speaking to men, but if you walk into a room of 500 men and you've got some secret, whatever happens to be, don't be surprised that half the room has the same damn secret. Or half the other people feel the same way, or half the people have done that. Nobody talks about it because there's so much guilt and shame about it. But then when you speak to it and when you own it and when you're vulnerable and you can accept that, it sets you free. I heard just this last week a different terminology or definition of vulnerability that I think is the best one I've heard so far. I say vulnerability all the time. I had a gentleman last year say, you can't say that. Men don't show weakness. I'm like, what are you talking about? What's the big deal? But when we talk about vulnerability, literally it was a TikTok video that I saw, and this guy's like, vulnerability, the definition of vulnerability, this is his definition, and it really resonates. The definition of vulnerability is being willing to say something that you may or may not be judged, but you choose to say it anyway. So here's the truth. If you are looking at porn, the example I'm using on this podcast today, and it gets out and the neighborhood starts talking or the church starts talking about it, guess what? Get ready. You're going to get judged. Period. Here's the other aha. You already are being judged. You're going to get judged. But understand that there'll be other men in this example that are experiencing the same thing and they're like, oh shit. And so everybody else is talking stuff and they're like, oh my gosh, I don't want to go through that. So then they don't do it. But the reality is once you speak the truth, you're free. And then you also open the door for other people to be able to speak the truth. And don't be surprised that if you've done something, then you make amends, that other people start coming out to connect with you. I'm like, hey, can I open up? I got to share this. No one knows this. Because they feel safe. And again, that's one of the greatest gifts is I can help men feel safe in this process. But the reality is you cannot build, you cannot grow, you cannot make the money you want to make, have the relationship you want to have. You can't have the body if you are lying. You just can't. And I don't care what anybody else says, no matter how many systems you put in place, no matter how many things you do, if you are lying, you can't build it. And sometimes many of those lies are just lies that we tell ourselves of how we see ourselves. It's the negative self-talk. I'm telling you can eliminate that stuff. Any negative self-talk you have about yourself, more often than not, is a lie. If you cheated and you're telling yourself, I'm a cheater, I'm a cheater, I'm a cheater, I'm a cheater. Well, if you're continuing to cheat on constantly, okay, maybe. But more often than not, no, you cheated. It doesn't mean that's who you are. That's what you did. Very big distinguishing difference. Or I'm an addict. I have an addictive personality. It's like, or an alcoholic. Like, just because they were at one point doesn't mean they're an alcoholic today. We put labels on things. We point fingers, and so much of it's a projection of our own shit. And the more you can get honest with yourself, that's where it starts. So an invitation to you guys. Go look in the mirror. Just when you're alone, just sit there, look at yourself, and then get really honest. No one's there. Say, where are you lying? Where am I lying? Where am I not telling the truth? And just sit. And if most likely there's obvious things but things will start to come up. And then ask yourself, what would happen if I actually admitted this or took ownership in this? What would that say about me? And most likely, if you haven't, the pain's going to get kicker. You're going to start feeling anxious. But then you man up. And I don't say that lightly. You man up. Because for me, when I wasn't speaking the truth, I was a little boy. That's little boy energy. If you want to be a man, you tell the truth. It's going to hurt, but that's what a man does. And I'm inviting all the men that I'm listening here to be a man. If there are things that you need to clear and things you need to say, speak the truth. And if you don't know how to do that or need help in doing that, you're human. Reach out to me. Let's talk through that. And I'm telling you, the price that you are paying by not telling the truth is costing you more than you possibly can imagine. It's energy. So if you want more of something, you've got to let go of what's not serving you. And it's rooted in the truth, your truth. I'm so passionate about this, and it's been a long journey to get here, guys. My podcast, Burn Up. My tagline, freedom is in the fire. Everything we want is on the other side of what we're avoiding. It's in the uncomfortable conversations. It's taking ownership. It's stepping into the unknown. It's being scared of what other people think and putting yourself out on there on social and doing things. It's putting yourself out there. It's uncomfortable. That is bravery, having fear, but choosing to do it anyway. So, who do you want to be? You know, many times men want to be somebody and do all these things. They say, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. I've seen this happen so many times, even with guys that I work with. I'm going to do this. I want to do this. I'm like, great. Now let's build a plan to get there. And when you reverse engineer into it and what they have to start doing today, overwhelming. Can't do it. The fears kick in. The uncertainty kicks in. The path of growth, remember, if you want to grow and excel, you're going to be met with the opposite. Growth is moving through uncomfortableness. You don't just go from zero to hero without going through a lot of downturn, a lot of uncomfortableness, a lot of standstill, a lot of hitting ceilings or doors closing, but you still continue to go forward. I can promise you that as long as you don't quit, you will get to wherever you want to get and have whatever you want. That's how this works. The only difference between somebody that succeeds or doesn't succeed or the person that has what you want is that the person that has it or has made it, whatever that is to you, is they have been willing to do something you have not been willing to do with an asterisk, or I'd say ... up to this point. So do you want it? If you want it, you have to do something. You have to put forward action. You've got to face your fears. And guess what happens? Once you step into the flames that you thought were going to burn you and have 7-degree burns, maybe initially it's only a 5-degree burn, or maybe it's only a 3-degree. It still hurts, but you did it anyway. And the more and more you do it, it just becomes who you are. It's like second nature. It's not uncomfortable. So an invitation to everyone listening as we wrap things up. Sit with yourself. Get really honest. Write it down. Look in the mirror. No one's in the room, but get really clear. It's like, where have I lied? Where am I lying? Where am I not telling the truth? What stories am I telling myself that frankly really aren't accurate? Get honest with yourself. Identify what they are. Get awareness around where it is, about what's happening. And then the awareness creates the uncomfortableness. Let's be honest. We're all aware of it. We just bury it. This is where the addictive stuff comes in. But get clean, get sober, get clear, see it. And then do what you need to. Do what is necessary to set yourself free. It's really not about anybody else, guys. It's about you. And I know the cost of both sides of it, and I'm just here to tell you it's not worth it. Speak the truth, tell the truth, it will set you free. Your freedom is in the fire. And I'm inviting you to step into that and watch how your life takes off. And I promise you, your life will go to places that you never thought possible. But depending upon what has happened and where you're at, it will be painful. Get ready. It's going to be uncomfortable. Get ready. But keep moving forward. It's temporary. Everything is temporary. The highs, the lows. And the reality is if you don't speak the truth and you're in a place of shame and guilt and underneath it, and if everybody knew and you're a complete mess, you are prolonging that. It's not going away. You can't outrun the truth. So brother, rise up. Take ownership. Lick your wounds. Accept the consequences of whatever happens and step into that fire. And set yourself free. I appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for joining me this week on the Burn Up Podcast. We'll see you next time.